Teachers of Reddit, how easy is it to tell if a kid has a crush on somebody, and what are some entertaining stories surrounding that? Story 1 used to be a Calc 1 teaching assistant. This really smart kid kept coming up to the TA sessions because he very obviously had a crush on a girl who would also show up to after hours. They would both be the only two people in the sessions. When they needed homework help, I'd ask them to solve the problems together and come to me if they had any questions while I pretended to catch up on work but actually played GTA on my laptop. Sometimes I'd overhear them talking and getting to know each other. It was cute. He sure did make my life a lot easier. Story 2 Right now I have two kids in my first period that just don't leave each other alone. The girl constantly complains if the boy doesn't show up to school. He is always pulling on her hair or finding any excuse to touch her. He likes to play thumb wars just to hold hands. It's really cute but also annoying because they refuse to do work sometimes. I usually get them to do work by saying a very loud and annoying "aw." Teaching is fun. Story 3 My high school teacher would change the seating chart and make your seat next to your crush if you told her. Though, her one condition was the shed keep you seated next to your crush even if you guys broke up or stopped liking each other. Funny times. Story 4 I have this one teacher that will totally just say anything that's on her mind. When she just flat out said, "Do you guys like each other or what?" to these two kids in my class. Within 3 days they were dating and still are. Story 5 I hold a lot of class discussions. Sometimes it's easy because you'll notice kids smile different when their crush is talking. Their entire body will suddenly cue into that person. It's adorable. Story 6 Incredibly obvious. It's also unfortunately obvious when they have a crush on you. Awkward as. I've never purposefully helped my students get closer with their crushes. It's already hard enough to make a seating chart without considering these things, but I don't tease them about it like some do and might let a quick convo or note passing slip by if I catch on to what's going on. Story 7 I'm more than positive my teacher shipped me and my now GF when we were in 7th grade. For some reason 3 weeks into the school year he moved a few people around and put this girl in front of me and we started talking pretty fast. Never got mad if we were done with work and turned around to start talking to each other. Never teased us either. He even rearranged the entire formation of desks a few times and always sat me and her together. We've stayed together through middle and high school, 10 years and counting, and are planning on getting married. Edit Oh yeah, we're totally inviting him to our future wedding. My little brother knows his son and last I heard from him he was super happy we were still together. Story 8 God if my 8th grade math teacher was on Reddit she'd tell a story about how she had to tell you Flynn lives hey moron. Stop playing SimCity 2000 for a second and pay attention to the girl sitting next to you, who is literally professing her love to you. I was a. Story 9 I'm a new teacher here young and stuff 21 as someone who went through that about 3 years ago, it's pretty obvious. During the training program I was in we are assigned a teacher and observe and help teach the said class. During classroom discussions when I let the teacher do his thing, I would just sit and try and figure out who liked who. I was bored I couldn't have my phone out. This one nerdy kid sat next to this girl, and he was just staring and staring. Funny thing is, groups were getting assigned for a silly project about evolution, where they would make a poster board at home, exchange phone numbers and stuff, and I got to choose the groups. My teacher mentor liked to incorporate me into class discussions and assignments. I purposefully put him and this girl in a group by themselves. Most groups were of 3 people. Little man, I got you. Story 10 Not a teacher but am former high school student. My teacher was in the middle of assigning new seats row by row, 1 seat at a time. The cute foreign exchange student got placed right next to me current seat, and then as she said my name and new seat I just yelled out "No." She asked me if I'd prefer to stay where I was and I nodded. Totally bro move MS, Z thank you. Story 11 Student here. One of the teachers I had would place people next to each other. Sometimes if the teacher thought that some people might have a thing for each other, it was always the wrong people though and nothing really came it. Story 12 I teach K8 and some of the older kids will tell me or their friends will tell me. A lot of the 5th grade girls like the middle school boys. And they just get all giggly and it's pretty adorable. There's a few of the slightly younger kids who I can tell might end up dating when they're older because of how they bicker. Just watching the dynamics that go on in the school is generally entertaining. Story 13 Teacher. It's usually easy to notice on students that are more reserved or a little troublemaker. It's amazing how a little crush can turn Johnny never talks into a student who raises his hand to answer every question. I currently have one who can be handful and is not the best at personal hygiene. One day he showed up with his hairbrush and 6 bottles of Axe body spray and that put off red flags. Sure enough at recess I see him with a girl on the swings. Working with 6th grade it's fun to watch this EU stage and give them about crushes. Story 14 Not a teacher but looking back on myself in high school it had to be painfully obvious. She would take my hand and draw on it all class. That was already a red flag but she also would place my hand all over and give me a feel of everything. As a teenage boy I didn't mind but boy was it not subtle at all. Ended up going to 2 homecomings and prom with her, so Kat was kind of out of the bag after that. Story 15 Oh man, the longing stares across the room. The almost creepy wistful what-ifs you can just see in their eyes. When I was in middle school, that was me. Story 16 Work with middle school-aged students. Young guy has this massive crush on a young lady his age. This kid is so obvious about it he might as well have taken out a billboard. To round it all out he is right at the age where there is a near generational difference in maturity between the average guy and average girl. You could just see the distaste in the young lad's eyes. A look of "oh dear lord, you aren't even on my intellectual plane of existence, please go away" hilarious. Story 17. It's easy to spot with some boys. When their female crush sits next to another boy, they'll loudly taunt them, saying, "Look who's sitting next to each other. Have you kissed yet?" But to be honest, a lot of crushes become obvious because friends come into class and yell at me, "X is now dating Y." Always embarrassing for the new couple. Most of the time my brain then goes, didn't see that coming, but it makes a lot of sense. Middle schoolers are adorable. Story 18. Not a teacher, but I have a story of my one teacher with my personal relationship at the time. So a good friend of mine had a huge crush on me, and so did I back. Now my one teacher was a complete sweetheart and she got on extremely well with her students. She also liked getting involved with her students in a good way. Now a few months after the friend's first confession, the one day he randomly handed me a note that read "count to 30 and follow me," and he left the class. Now I freaked out a little because I'm a goody two shoes and never left my class without good reason. So 30 seconds became 2 very long minutes. I could see the dude walking outside checking up on me and started to notice the class was staring at me. I was and still kind of extremely shy, but I knew I couldn't just leave him there. So I collected myself and asked the teacher if I can go to the ladies' room, and she quite suddenly yelled, "Yes Sophie, please do." So I realized something was up and quickly hurried out the door. The dude had coated the whole school hall in roses, and when I followed him I found him with a cake that asked, "Will you be my girlfriend?" This stuff sounds like it came out of a not chic flick, but it actually happened, which still shakes me to this day. But yeah, apparently the whole class, especially my teacher, were in on it and set the whole thing up. In fact, my teacher was the one who helped set up the entire thing. For the rest of my high school life, that confession was like the standard for the rest of the guys in the year. I said yes, and we dated for a few years. Unfortunately, due to personal issues for both of us, the relationship didn't last, but we didn't end on bad terms. I still consider them a good friend. Story 19. Last year, one of my students, 13 years old, had a crush on one of his classmates. Except he didn't really know how to express it. After annoying her verbally for a few times, he ended up cutting a strand of her hair during class. Not very entertaining, but so cute. A few weeks ago, 2 of my students, 13 as well, hold hands while going out of the classroom at the end of the lesson. They're both boys in a school where there's a lot of homophobia and boys shouldn't show affection because it's not manly. Story 20. We always know, teachers know everything. Any teacher who appears not to know something just has a really good poker face or is prioritizing stuff. You broke a rule and didn't get caught. We just picked our battles. You did coke in the bathroom, dude. I've done coke. I know what a coked up teenager looks like. I can tell the difference between when you're stoned, when you're on opiates, when you're on uppers, when you've taken your meds, when you haven't taken your meds. You fingered Stacy at the dance. The whole faculty lounge knows. You told everyone you fingered Stacy at the dance. We all know you told everyone, and we know you're a loser. You're secretly gay. We know that's if we are pro-LGBTQ. If we are a bigoted rural teacher, there's a chance that we have no idea what gay looks like. We are the all-seeing eye. Story 21. I had a student leave me a note once stating that she liked the boy sitting next to her. He used her for answers in class and ignored her the rest of the time. She was such a sweet girl. It was hard to watch. I really hope she started to be interested in boys worth her time when she entered high school the following year. Story 22. Oh my god, yes, we always know. The most blatant one is when a student came to me talking about how one of the girls in class kept looking at him and he couldn't focus. It's weird. And she looks like a bug. I pulled her aside to ask if she liked him, and she nodded up and down really fast and excited. I had to talk to her about not staring, and she said she understood. She stopped staring, but started sitting in front of him and twerking in her seat, or dropping things and bending over to get them in front of him. They were in 6th grade. We had multiple parent-teacher conferences about it. Story 23. Teenagers are so gossipy they just make obvious jokes and or just tell meth teacher who's their friend's crush just to make them feel uncomfortable. It's pretty adorable, especially because it's usually boys and they are so shy about it. Story 24. I worked in a 4th grade room with 2 other teachers, and we had a bit of a bet all year about which of the boys who had been stuck with the same class of girls since kindergarten would fall in love with the new girl, would constantly point out signs to each other about our favorite contenders. Poor new girl was totally oblivious to all of it. I won in the end. We overheard the boy I was betting on ask her out on the last day. She told him she wasn't ready to date yet. XD, poor boy. It's always the quiet nerdy ones. Story 25. I used to fool around so much in class with everyone that the teacher kept gesturing the finger and whole thing. I didn't know what it was at the time until years later. Story 26. Not a teacher. But one time my teacher overheard me debating with my friends if I should tell him I liked him, and my teacher went, "Who, Robert?" She said it was obvious. Story 27. Reading all of this, I'm almost certain my senior year stats teacher was trying to hook me up with a hot girl in class. Props to you, Mr. G, but I missed all the signs until it was far too late. Story 28. In grades 4 to 6 they actually interact with the opposite gender. It starts with actually talking to each other, lending pencils, etc. Eventually they will start antagonizing or pestering each other. At this point, when it is disruptive to the class, you'll start calling them out, and they pretend to be incredibly disgusted. Dude, just ask her out on a date already so we can move on and get back to work. Hey, it's 2019 and girls can ask out boys on a date now, so just get it over with so we can get back to our work. Story 29. I had a huge crush on my history teacher in high school. I'm pretty sure he could tell too, because I was constantly drawing and painting pictures of him, and had him pose for a portrait once. Wonder what he thought. Story 30. I have an answer that is kind of the opposite of what you asked. When I was in 9th grade, I think, there were 2 kids in my English class who were crushing on each other, ended up dating later, and it was obvious the teacher was shipping them. Teachers, we notice you too. Story 31. It's pretty obvious, especially the boys liking the girls, and the girls having a crush on the male teacher. When I taught PE, I showed the class how to do a headstand, and my shirt slipped down up. A couple of the girls' faces were redder than mine when I came back down, haha, and they tease each other about it. Story 32. At the high school level, it's really simple actually for boys, which is surprising because it never seemed that way when I was a teen. You'll see them doing everything they can to get closer to the young lady and impress her. Chemistry. Hey, Mia, I don't know this, can we be lab partners? Al guy, oh, I know the answer, let me reach over you and show you. P, look how hard I can throw the dodgeball, doesn't my strength impress you? Miscellaneous. Hey, it's track preseason, even though we run totally different events distances, want to train together after school. Story 33. It's very obvious. Once when collecting midterm exams, I noticed that there were 2 exams with Hank on the front. There's only one in the class. I'm like, Hank, get over here, why do you have 2 exams? He didn't know. I went through the exams and found Megan's exam missing. She's had a crush on him for forever and wrote his name on her exam by mistake. How one does that by mistake is still beyond me. Names change to protect the embarrassed. Story 34. Not a teacher, but I'm currently the first high school final year, woohoo. When I asked out my crush, it came as a surprise to her, and when I told a few of my friends asked her out, they were surprised too. Apparently everyone over the age of 21 knew I have a crush on her, to the point where my mom and her mom literally were discussing it. I thought I was so subtle. Reading this tells me I'm mistaken. A few things to add. She's a year older than me and just moved states, so she said no cause she didn't want to lead me on. We stay in contact though, so there may be hope for the future after I finish in November, but right now it's not gonna work. I teach middle school and have to proctor our state exams at the end of each school year. Because it's a state exam, there are many rules about what students can and can't do, and am required to circle the room to monitor them. One year I see this boy try to secretly slide a note to the girl next to him. Thinking he's giving her help on the text, I grabbed it. As I'm taking it, he said, "Please no." The note read, "I think I'm falling in love with you." I looked back at him and he had the biggest nervous eyes. I simply threw it out and didn't say anything. Story 35. Not a teacher, but when I was in 6th grade, my female though not important, but just to point out, math teacher knew I had a crush on this one guy who turned out to be and a pretty stupid one at that, and she knew instantly because of the guys I've liked in the past. Which makes me wonder if she ever stalks or eavesdrops on her students' conversations. Though I wouldn't surprise due to how loud they are and how much rumor spread. Oh, quick detail is that my old friend made a joke about how hairy the guy's legs were, and the math teacher started laughing her off. LMAO. Story 36. Kindergarten. Here, kids that crush on a teacher, very obvious and endearing. I have one student this year that has some ridiculous game for a 5-year-old boy. His compliments are top tier. Mrs. Footmouth, I love you to death. You are the cutest girl here. Want to share my Ritz? You've had a hard day. If it wasn't wildly inappropriate, I would tell him to make sure to use condoms when he's older. This Valentine's, I witnessed a girl drop her street address since no one has a home phone anymore into a little boy's bag. He was, by far, the smartest boy in class, and I secretly applauded her choice. How I react to it depends on the student's home life situation. The harder the home life, the more I let him indulge in his fantasy so that he has a better chance at gaining a positive relationship with his school environment. I know when they get older, they will look for ways to escape their home environment, and I always hope that place they run to is school. Story 37. This has been such a wholesome thread, but I can't help but think how life would have been had I not been fat and ugly growing up and got to sit and possibly marry a high school sweetheart. Eve missed out. And now I know something new that Eve missed out on. Why am I so pathetic and an adult now? So it's not me, but my friend was substitute teacher, and the first time he had a certain class, a girl in the classroom yelled to her friend outside, "Girl, hey, get in here friend, we have substitute teacher," to which the friend responded, "Is he hot? Don't quite know if it qualifies, but it was pretty funny when he told me." Story 38. I'm not a teacher, but my senior year of high school, there was this girl whose locker was outside one of my classes and we had the same class afterwards. She'd want me to walk her to class every day, and if I didn't she'd be all, "Why didn't you wait for me?" Or if I wasn't at school that day she'd say, "Where were you? I missed you." Anyway, I had a massive crush on this girl, but I was also incredibly shy about romantic things. I could talk to girls like friends no problem, but for romantic things, I just couldn't get past that mental block, and it never occurred to me until later that she had any interest in me, but I think my teacher could tell we were into each other. After his class was over, I'd wait by her locker, and on occasion my teacher would see me and be like, "Waiting for your girlfriend." "She's not my girlfriend, she's just my friend." "Yeah, okay, whatever you say." I have a lot of regrets in my life and not making a move was one of them. I left out that if I wasn't at her locker, she'd ask my teacher if I was in class that day, which he would tell me later. "That girl asked if you were in class yesterday." "Oh, okay man, I was a blithering idiot." Story 39. I'm not actually a proper teacher, but last summer as an English teacher for a local community English learning center in China. There was this kid who asked me which class this girl were attending, and I told him just to come to every lesson. I asked him why and he just said she can help me with what I don't understand. I said I could too, but he said it's just not the same, and every time we had a lesson he would also sit next to that girl and get salty when someone else sat next to her. The kid's a massive though, 18 lessons and never even made the first move. Story 40. I'm not a teacher, but my 5-year-old daughter has a classmate who would always stare at her smiling and then tell her she's pretty. One time I brought her to school a bit late, and the little boy was insisting that my daughter sit beside him. Thing is, there's already a kid beside him, so he keeps trying to push the kid away. Story 41. It's pretty easy when you assign group work and students go when you call out certain names together. I end up finding it accidentally most of the time, but some kids are really open about it. Funny story, I once paired up a guy with his crush since I thought he would take it more seriously to do the chemistry lab together. The experiment was to explore the different tests for gases: burning splint for hydrogen, glowing splint for oxygen, lime water for carbon dioxide, etc. The girl got startled by the pop noise from a hydrogen gas test that she yelped, dropped the test tube, and fell backwards. Miraculously, the guy caught both her and the test tube, and the entire class whistled and cheered. They started dating shortly after, and were still together when I left the school the year after. Story 42. In first grade I gave Brandon this note that was basically, "I like you, do you like me, circle yes or no." That little snitch took it to our teacher and she reprimanded me in front of our who class. "Mrs. Page, I hope you're dead or 150 and miserable." Anyway, I cried and I got reprimanded for that. Story 43. This reminds me of my 7th grade social studies class. The girl who I had crushed on since first grade was in it, and well, halfway through the second 9 weeks, my teacher changed the seats around. I sat in the last seat of the second row, and the person who sat in front of me was that girl. Needless to say, the whole class made a lot of commotion when it happened. 12-year-old me enjoyed the view I had. Story 44. Not a teacher, but one of my teachers thinks I like this boy. I'm gonna refer to the boy as KK. Is easily annoyed, and I like annoying people, so obviously he's my main target. He defiantly hates me due to how often I bug him, but I don't care. Anyway, I often sit next to K or request to be seated beside him to annoy him during class. I also do it to help him and make sure he actually works. Since he sometimes doesn't, I can see why my teacher would think I like him, as I annoy him, ask to sit beside him, and when referring to him state that he's pretty cool, because he is. Despite this, I do not like him. I find his personality annoying sometimes, and he overall isn't my type. She doesn't mention it too much anymore, but she has stated that she thinks I like him during an event that I was selected to attend. PSA: if a kid annoys another kid, it doesn't mean they 100 like them. The kid could just be an annoying like me. Story 45. Practically all of these answers are copied from here. That's just sad. Story 46. Not a teacher, but my English teacher absolutely called it with me and my husband. We met our junior year in high school, and most days, you had to drag me in kicking and screaming. I moved a lot as a kid, and I liken the area I lived to the mafia. Just when I think I'm out, they drag me back in. But I met the man who would be my husband in English class. First I was going to wring his neck. He stole my desk. Not intentionally, but I had it first. Then a few weeks later we started talking. He had a girlfriend, so we were just friends who talked a lot about Family Guy. As the year progressed and he was single again, we started getting closer. Usually we would banter back and forth. He'd copy my homework, which he would purposely drive me nuts just to get a rise out of me. It worked, would hang outside of school, etc. Usually the teacher would give us this knowing look, but never really said anything. One day we were going about our usual nonsense and I had him laughing so hard he was nearly in tears. Don't ask me what I did. This was almost 12 years ago. I really don't remember. Might have been a Family Guy joke I casually entered into one of my assignments. My teacher looked up from her desk and just kinda kept looking between the two of us, me then him, then back to me, then back to him. I just kinda shrugged like I'm absolutely just as lost as you. She shakes her head at the both of us and finally says out loud, "If you two aren't dating, you very soon will be." Now we denied anything was going on, which at that point we were pretty innocent. We flirted like crazy, but no funny business. He apologized to me because he agreed with a friend of mine when she said I had a nice. He was cute, so we were adamant that we were just friends. Just friends, just friends. Can't a guy and a girl hang out and be just friends? I had a huge crush on him at that point, so hearing that out loud shattered my soul. The rest of that year, if I so much as giggled, I did get this knowing look from her and the rest of the class. Fast forward to the end of the school year, he asks me out. Why? SSSS. So we started dating and making things official. By the time our senior year rolls around, he walks me to my class hand in hand, and all of a sudden we hear it. I knew it. I knew you two would end up dating. I should send her a message saying, hey, we dated, and got married. And now we're having a kid, so once again I've exceeded expectations. I always wondered if she'd remember me as a student. TLDR, me and a guy talked a lot in class and I made him almost wet himself laughing. English teacher picked right up on that and knew we would end up together. We're married now. Update. I sent her a message and she was absolutely blown away. She was so excited for us and our little boy. Story 47. In high school, when I started seeing my girlfriend, I did go over to her house on Wednesdays after school, and liked when I grew out my beard, but this was a private school and had rules that said I had to be clean shaven. Well, one Tuesday the dean came up to me and told me I had to shave before school the next day or I'd get demerits. I said, can I please shave Thursday? He looks at me for a sec, cracks a smile and says, let me guess, it's for a girl. I just sheepishly said yes, and he gives me a nod and says Thursday's fine. My dean was a total bro. Story 48. Now I'm here wondering if my math teacher 2 years ago knew I had a crush on this one girl. When I talked to my crush I stuttered and my face turned red. I mean, it was so blatantly obvious. Story 49. I'm not a teacher, but I was in a family and consumer science class in 7th grade and there was a kid who really liked a girl and enlisted the help of the teacher to make a big cookie for Valentine's Day. He covered it in sprinkles and candy like M&Ms and Reese's Pieces and went to give it to his beloved. She's allergic to peanuts and had to be hauled out in an ambulance. Her parting words to Loverboy were, "You could have killed me, you stupid." My FACS teacher was super straight-laced and had written people up for saying before, she knew better than to even object to this girl. The principal's nipples were pretty tweaked by the whole situation and we were no longer allowed to use common allergens in class, which I don't know why that wasn't already the policy, but I'm not in the position to argue that. The poor dude was so dejected, but I looked him up a few weeks ago and he's married to the girl. So I guess all's well that ends well. Story 50. Not a teacher, but one day during lunch in 8th grade, a classmate I had a crush on asked if I wanted to go to the football game with her that night. I, being a massive introvert and not much of a fan of football, told her I'd ask my mom if that was fine. I proceeded to go home, not ask my mom, and just spend the night probably watching YouTube. She never asked again, and I moved the summer after, so probably nothing would have really come of it anyway. I didn't realize until years later what that was about. Story 51. I was a Hebrew school teacher. These two kids were the smartest in their class. They knew everything backwards and forwards. They sat next to each other and would find excuses to talk, like pretending they didn't know something. Josh, she knew that you knew the Mariv Aravim by heart. Ali, he knew that you knew the prayers before and after Torah backwards. Eventually I asked the teacher who I trained, long story there, if I could help them. I took them to another room and said, I know you both know everything, so hey, race some extra work to get through, work on it together. They'll be back in the room if you need me. It was just the hatikva, basic stuff. Last I heard they're engaged. And no wedding invite for old Shutrick, typical Josh and Ali. Story 52. Right. One time this kid had a crush on some girl. Everyone knew except her. It was hilarious to see this kid try whilst the girl didn't take a hint. You could tell because he kept looking at her from across the room. So as any great teacher would do, I moved them next to each other when I arranged the seating plan. I also put them as partners for most of the practicals, basically the British version of assignments. Then one day this kid was walking to his seat and I heard his friend say he is going to do it. I ponder to myself what's going on, then I remember and watch in excitement. Then the kid falls on his own foot whilst approaching the girl and he smashed his nose into her chair. At least the girl noticed him and helped him. Sorry to say he ruined his chances that day. Story 53. I'm not a teacher, but in high school I had a huge crush on a foreign exchange student from Mexico. He would walk me to my class after lunch every day, which happened to be Spanish. My Spanish teacher knew this because he stood at the door every day welcoming the class in. But once class started he would shut the door and leave whoever was late outside while he went through warm-ups. One time, I'm running a minute late to class because I want to stay outside and flirt with my crush a tiny bit longer. My Spanish teacher sees us outside of the classroom, and not being able to hear what we are saying starts to full-on narrate us in true telenovela style in Spanish to the rest of the class, and allowed the rest of the class to add in little juicy storylines on Spanish. He made it a fun extra credit warm-up assignment for the class to write a couple paragraphs of a love story about us in Spanish. When he finally let me into class, he had some kids share their stories out loud to practice their Spanish. I walked in that classroom finally realizing what was going and was so embarrassed. My crush and I are still close friends today and laugh about it now, but don't be late to class just cause a boy is dreamy. Story 54. My band director knew. During practice once he chewed me out for talking to my best friend who was seated right next to me, and loved me halfway across the band right in the middle of the French horns right next to the girl I was crushing on. Ended up dating for a few months. As much as I hated that band director, dude really helped me out. Story 55. I was an A student in high school and pretty nerdy. I started dating a really cute but not so smart girl in my Spanish class. When I got my grade from the teacher he said, "Sorry, you ended up with a B." He smiled and said, "On the bright side you got Elisa's grade up to a C. Was it worth it?" I smiled and said, "You bet." He laughed and said I figured it probably was. Story 56. Seeing a boy constantly picking on a girl, teasing, etc. First sign I notice. In the occasion of them being too loud and not respecting the 5 times I asked for silence, I will totally out them by saying something like, if you want to have a date, go outside. It's not allowed in here. Hearing one of them go "you" is always so much fun and effective for the loudness. P.S. I'm a librarian. Story 57. Not a teacher, but I remember when I was a kid, I drew a theme park and asked the teacher to write a message for the girl I liked in the class, asking if she would like to go to the park with me. Silly young kindergarten me. Story 58. My high school math teacher started shipping me and a girl from my class. Our friends started doing it for the lulz because we were both very similar. We both had good marks and were very nerdy. IDK how it happened, but my math teacher might have sensed it. She liked us both a lot. Whenever I would get to sit next to her she would drop somehow cute, and one time we both got the same mark on a test, and she said, "Oh look, you and me got the same mark. It's what I say, this will end up in a wedding." I remember being with this girl out East school once and seeing our math teacher, and she was just grinning all the time thinking like, "Oh, youth love. How romantic." I think she believed the girl was the one who had feelings towards me and that I was the one who needed to be encouraged to go for it. Joke's on her, I was the one who ended up developing feelings for her because of all the peer pressure and, in the end I got rejected, but props to my math teacher and wing woman. Story 59. Not a teacher, but I had a on-again off-again crush until I confessed during an off period that I liked the guy, we'll call him Henry. Nothing happened, but we both stayed really good friends. We had one class together senior year, and the teacher was super chill. He honestly didn't give a what we did in class as long as we were learning the material. Had a group project and me, Henry and another girl were in the same group, the girl pretty bad health issues, so she was gone for a good 90% of the project, leaving just me and Henry most of the time. Now, because we're in high school and we were both pretty loud people, oftentimes, what would end up happening is that me and Henry would start bickering about stupid stuff, and the rest of the class would just watch us, and yell at us to start dating already when the teacher was out of the room. One day, our teacher has taken his break to pop a bunch of popcorn and came to class and passed it out to everyone except me and Henry, sits down, and says it's time for everyone's favorite activity, watching the class ship interact.